Hey guys, Mounir, founder of Paraswap. Happy to be here. I hope you had a good conference so far. This is the last session of today, so I imagine everyone is quite tired, but we try to be fast this time. So I'm going to talk to you today about aggregation and how aggregators help on scaling DeFi. I try to find a definition of what's an aggregation. It's very contextual. It means a lot of things. Depends on what are we talking about, so what category or industry are we talking about. But I found this one to be quite generic. It says the process of combining things or amount into a single group or total, whatever that means. But in our context, or like when we talk about aggregators in a technical term or a product term, so those are services that aggregates data or other services in order to provide an added value for the end user that they could not get otherwise. But why are we talking about this, and what are we here in the first place? Well, I guess everyone from us wants to see mass adoption happening in crypto, and I think we are in a very good timing where crypto has grown a lot for the last 3 years. And I believe that aggregators help on pushing forward this growth that we're seeing in crypto and will lead to the next wave of mass adoption and the next billion users. But also, what are we trying to scale exactly? So there are many things. When we talk about scaling in crypto, in general, people think TPS, transactions per second. But also there are other things that we should think about when we're talking about scaling. So there is volume, TVL, like having more volumes being processed on trading, on deposits, and withdrawals in crypto. But here it's mostly about protocols. So it's mostly DeFi, NFTs, and whatever is happening on-chain. Is it about users, like having more users, or user experience? We've seen very few talks or discussions about scaling user experience, and I think that should be one of the most interesting ones that we should start thinking about as a community. I also like to talk about Web 2.0 when talking about aggregation, because we have some very successful examples that happened the last 20 years or so. So the pre-search engines, Google or AOL or Yahoo or others, people used to discover contents manually between codes. So either through curation websites, either through recommendations, through friends, and so on. But once search engine emerged and Google was the last vague of those who overperformed, well, it created new possibilities that didn't exist before. It created also new industries that didn't exist before, like the SEO industry didn't exist pre-search engine era. So the value that a search engine or like a Google has brought in is massive, and it brought arguably more users, it brought more traffic to the internet, because simply some of the cases that didn't exist now exist thanks to the performance of those, I would say, products. Also, when we talk, they ask us what is Paraswap. The common example is airline ticket aggregators. But you can also break down the different steps when booking airline tickets, and that shows the sophistication of the travel industry that went from just using a local agency that will play the aggregator to using various services in a very specific context, and also some of the services, they cover different steps. So when we travel, we go through an inspiration phase where we want to know where are we going and what is the best place we should go to, and there are various services that can help on that, like either a kayak, Google Flights, or a specialized website that will try to curate various places. So they play this aggregation role. When we're doing a booking, we go to a very specialized website that will give us the best deals, either find the cheapest ticket or find maybe a package for a particular travel with hotels and so on. We have even preparations services that will try to cover the travel from end to end and help us optimize our service. For instance, if you're a professional, you're using a TripIt that's going to optimize every single step of your travel, including delays in airlines and so on. You have Uber and Lyft and other services when you arrive, so you don't need to hail a taxi. You have Google Maps to know whether you should go by bike or by a train or a metro. And the bus trip, you still share your experience for other travelers, and it becomes a virtuous cycle. So before going to a trip, you see whatever others have said about that trip, so it makes you get a better inspiration that you would curate with an aggregator, and so on and so forth. So the value proposition of those aggregators is tremendous, but also it started by what you call GDS, Global Distribution Systems, and those are like middlewares that allow airline industries and train companies, to connect with those aggregators, among many other things. So if I'm able to book my travel through Kayak and able to find an optimal route, it's mostly thanks to this middleware. We have various ones, but the biggest ones are Amadeus and Sabre. Funny thing about Sabre, it was created tens of years ago and evolved from a very old school service to quite a modern one. So about aggregation and DeFi, what I guess everyone knows, about DEX aggregators, but there are also lending and borrowing aggregators. We have services that optimizes liquidity, farming, yield optimization, and so on. So for the sake of time, we're going to focus on trading. That's also, we can show how we approach trading aggregation on Paraswap. So if you take that example, here we have on the top those UI aggregators, like the ones that are the user interface or help the user get the best trading experience or trading price. And on the other side, you have decentralized exchanges. Various ones, we have now over 100 decentralized exchange, but between both, there are middlewares similar to Sabre and Amadeus, and we run one of those, it's called Paraswap, that helps on this connectivity and helps on making some cases possible. That cannot be done manually. As a user, you can go to every single decentralized exchange, but it's not going to be optimal in terms of time, but it's not going to be possible to perform like a middleware or like an aggregator like Paraswap. But there are also other more complex use cases, like for instance here with Aave, if you supplied some WBTC and earning some APY, say 2%, then you want to optimize your yield and you switch into maybe ETH that's making you a higher APY. Well, you can do this yourself as a user, withdraw the WBTC, make a swap, go for exchange for ETH and deposit to Aave. Not to talk about the time consumption of this, but also if you have a collateral that's backed by your WBTC, and making this operation can make you subject to liquidation if you get very close to liquidation. So by using a middleware like Paraswap, it's going to take care of all those hidden details. Like you are close to liquidation, it's going to take care of your collateral, take a flash loan, in order to make you as far as possible from that risk and make the swap using the best possible rates and buy the ETH and deposit the ETH and get you all of this in one single transaction. So that's also to highlight the high value proposition that comes, or like the added value of an aggregator. But also aggregators contribute a lot in volume. As we see here, we just took the volume we made in June and compared the volume that we processed, like the inputs and the outputs, versus the exported volume. An example here, if you're selling a token to another token, say 100 ETH to 100K DAI, maybe the best route will be 100 ETH to 100K DAI to 100K USDC to 100K DAI. Paraswap processed 100K DAI or USD in general, but if that trade goes to Balancer processed 200K, so like double the amounts. At the end, the user got what they wanted, they got the best price. The Paraswap provided that great service, so we're happy, but also those DEXs got a higher amount, so like a higher volume in the fees that come with it. So every party is satisfied, but what I wanted to highlight is that the volumes that are exported by aggregator surpasses the volume that they process. Another example, before we finish, there is also some new things that can be done only by aggregators, and it's very hard to do as a user manually. Like, what about buying an NFT without having to own the asset that the seller is asking for? For instance, you have a Bored Ape, you want to sell it and get ETH. Well, the other user maybe doesn't have ETH, but out of a click of a button, they can use whatever token they have, so it can be DAI or BAL or anything else, or maybe they can use 3 tokens to buy the ETH and buy the NFT in a single transaction. So that I think helps not only on volumes, which is covered anyways, but helps especially on scaling the user experience. So that's the developers who are working on this and the end users who are using this don't have to worry about all this complexity that is behind. They just need to push a button and get their operation done. As an Uber versus a taxi, where with a taxi you have to go physically and hail for the taxi, where as an Uber, when it works, you click on a button, you push a button, and you have your driver come in a few minutes. So I think that's the value proposition of aggregators in scaling the user experience. So I think that we're definitely not solving the TPS problem. That's maybe for layer 2s. We can see them also as aggregators in a sense, because they will aggregate various transactions and push them on a block, especially the ZK rollups. But aggregators clearly bring help on scaling volumes, not TVL, but volumes, as we clearly saw the difference between the process versus the exported volume. And I think definitely on the user experience, when we see some wallets using aggregators, the superiority of their user experience is much higher. And as we saw with that example with NFTs, those are cases that cannot be done manually. And aggregators clearly bring this volume. We think that implicitly we help on increasing the number of users, because if you get a great experience, necessarily there will be more users coming into crypto and into DeFi, and I think this is the contribution that aggregators bring. Well, thank you. Happy to answer any question. I guess everyone is getting ready for the parties. So thank you guys. Thank you for listening to me. Have a great day.